All right. Um, Apparently we are alive. We had one person
Excellent.
waiting for us. I
What's
can
up?
guess who it is.
What's up?
What's
You know what
funny
we're
is
doing.
I was thinking about inviting Hayes to join us on a Zoom.
Oh yeah.
And then I thought about the old days in the left channel when we had one fan, Nolan, and then he joined the band and we lost and we lost our one fan. That's the
We
problem is
should
that
tell.
like we could invite Hayes to onto the Zoom and join us, and that might be fun. But then we would lose our one fan.
Maybe he has fans.
There you go. Oh, yeah. So let's see here. We the name of this show is the Psychedelic Jesus, and we could we'll probably get into that later. But why don't we just talk about our purse, just like a one sentence introduction as to our own connections to that. I've actually flirted with Christianity for my whole life. Um,
Ooh, it sounds serious.
flirted with Christianity. I grew up sort of Catholic. I was Catholic, but in a very secular way. And
Don't they
then
call that Catholic?
Catholic. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
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 Yep. I grew up Catholic. Yeah, that's good. And I was serious about being Catholic. I was always different. I was always very spiritual and mystical oriented, but I was very serious about being Catholic in my late teens and early 20s. And actually went to a Christian school, and I've studied quite a bit of formal Christian theology in my life. And later in life, I flirted with Christianity again in my 30s, and that's when I got a graduate degree in theology. So, and I taught Sunday school for 5 years. That having been said, I have never fit in well with Christians very well. So it's always been a
Did it?
little bit of a weird fit.
How do they feel about you teaching your home cooked theology?
Well, some of them liked it and some of them didn't, but I eventually lost the job. So what does that say?
They missed out.
All right, I'm working on that now. How about you? Do you want to talk about your, a real quick connection to Jesus?
Oh, the theory. Oh, there. Your topic. Yeah. Let's see.
Just as an introduction. We'll
Um,
talk about it later.
Yeah, I've been very spirit God oriented through any means possible, and I grew up Jewish, and Jesus was not part of that, nor was the idea of belief. But used to sit in churches a lot, and there were certain aspects of the tradition I liked. And then I've kind of had a resurgence. That all went by the wayside for other topics, focuses, and then a lot of my studies feel like they've been directed towards one specific expression of religion and spirituality. And right now it's Christianity in a way, and Jesus more specifically. So yeah, I'm very kind of involved with that experience right now. Yeah.
Um, I will also say today I'm doing something musically a little bit different than usual. I usually try to I'm slowly working on this instrument with all these effects and different synthesizers and stuff. But and so usually I'm playing that, and it's got lots of loops and sequences and stuff like that, as well as just the keyboard, or the C board really, that I'm playing right now. Oh, here, I will turn you on for a second. Um, but everything I worked on this week didn't go well uh, as far as changes to my instrument, but I did download some new sounds, so I think today I'm just going to play keyboard and explore some new sounds. This is called Cyborg Choir. I just want to do one note. Yeah, I kind of like it.
That's
I
nice.
press down and it becomes a robot, very light, and it's just a voice. It's
Yeah,
a good
you
sound.
really um, have been toying around with singing and crying robots for a long time. I love that sound too.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of part of my thing. Now that you mention it, is is the idea of singing robots is kind of a theme in my work, I suppose.
You said you failed on making changes. Is that to the seaboard or to your new instrument?
Well, I mean, it is a seaboard-driven instrument mostly, but
okay.
yeah,
But the
I
software.
was actually, to get into the technical side, I was trying to use to integrate the pitch shifting and the arpeggiator that are part of Rolly Studio.
Yeah.
And I found that it wasn't working. The DAW that I host the VST in isn't allowing the arpeggiator to work well, so there's nothing I can do about it. It sucks.
Yeah.
But that's life. So, but I downloaded these new sounds, so I figured, fuck it, I'll just kind of play with these new sounds.
Well, I can check in real quick on my
go for it.
Creative side of things. I spent the week, it was my daughter's graduation, so we had family, but also I spent the week trying out a host of new, I think I should call them nootropics, because that's what other people call them when I mention it. So I've been trying out amino acid nootropics, which are cognitive and performance enhancing supplements, ones that feel like a micro or even mini dose of psychedelics. Like they can get in that range. So I've kind of been exploring this like lower level side of consciousness modulation, but still noticeable, right? This isn't like taking vitamin B, or so they're really cool things. So
a nootropic, could you define a nootropic?
Yeah, it's a cognitive or performance enhancing supplement, and it's one you usually feel, unlike vitamins and stuff.
Unlike vitamin B.
These compounds feel like what I'm saying is akin to almost up to a mini dose of psychedelics. They can get really quite intense if you take a lot, like caffeine. But that would be the main reference, but in lots of different unique ways, and neurotransmitter and physical body and sugar levels and all sorts of things. So yeah, we can talk. Yeah,
caffeine might not be your favorite, but it would fall into the category.
Yes,
caffeine. Basically, it's something that's not really an intoxicant. It's not a drug, really. It's not a narcotic. But it's doing something. You might be enough at high doses. It's enough to really notice, like caffeine.
Yeah. Which again, and I'm really making this correlation because it's all consciousness modulation. It feels like classic psychedelics at low doses. It really does. It has the same rush. It has the same kind of sometimes slight dizziness. Different ability to focus, clarity of vision, like all the same things. They feel very similar, which I think is what psychedelics are doing. That's the similarity. They're both modulating neurotransmitters and other things and giving you that effect, but psychedelics can go further. So a nootropic is in that consciousness modulation, umbrella. So that's my check-in. I don't have to go into too much detail of what's what. Maybe later I could. I wouldn't mind telling the audience kind of what I found, but we can kind of get to that later if there's time. But that's been a lot of fun and like really informative, I guess. Been learning a lot and having cool.
Well, since we're talking about it,
it's not.
Is there anything you've added since we talked 2 weeks ago? Because this was the main thing we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, let's see. Last week I mentioned dopamine that I've used for a long time. That feels like, now I have a good sense of how they comparatively feel. Dopamine feels like excited physical motivation. Like you're both physically ready to go and your mind is kind of like inspired about whatever it is you're doing. That's what dopamine feels like. I found a better one called tyrosine. That's new since last week. Tyrosine is a precursor it's a precursor to dopamine, as well as epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are excitatory neurotransmitters. If you get scared or excited, though, that's what you're feeling, is those two things. So tyrosine elevates all of them, and that I really liked. That was better than dopamine straight. It felt very balanced. Some of them feel very singular. This felt like physical and neurotransmitters. Physical meaning like neurotransmitters mean like mood and outlook and the kind of mood that gives you energy, and now it's physical energy. Yeah, tyrosine felt like it was also gave me physical energy. Also new was glutamate, last time I tried glutamate, and it didn't do anything for me. I tried pyroglutamic acid, and that gave me a stomach ache. And then I tried glutamic acid, and glutamic acid is another glutamate precursor, which is maybe you want to do karate. You feel kind of like maybe your blood pressure rises, like you have out. More in the nerves to, obviously the move. Head kind of tones the muscles. This is more in the nervous system. Glutamate is glutamate is everywhere. So it was glutamine actually. So I landed on glutamic acid, which strangely enough is MSG minus the sodium atom. So I took a bunch of MSG basically, I guess. And that was that really worked. Holy shit. You could feel it. It gave me a headache.
Really?
I could see using a lower doses, but what I took was, I felt like I wanted to like go chop down trees with an axe, but I was just hanging with my family. But that was good. That was really useful. I like it. I think lower doses. Theobromine is new. And that's one atom different from caffeine, but has a really different effect. Instead of a vasoconstrictor like caffeine, it's a vasodilator. So when you take it, you feel this rush, your skin gets warm, you can breathe really well. It kind of gives you energy in a like flooding, like maybe an MDMA way, could feel like that. So theobromines from chocolate. That was new this week. That was I like that. And then this morning I took isoleucine, which is one of 3 branch chain amino acids, which have their own, function in the body. But isoleucine affects glucose uptake. And this is interesting. It's like the most physical of all of them. Like it doesn't feel like it's affecting my mood, except almost feels like Adderall, that I can use the resources I have more effectively somehow, right? It's not like doing anything to me. It's just letting me use my own sugar more efficiently. And so I really liked it. I could see being on it for a while. I felt like people talk about digestion, like you can eat your food, but you can't absorb the nutrients. I feel like this is fixing that in that glucose way, but also I'm taking it kind of more esoterically to mean other kinds of energy assimilation. But that's great. That made me feel really like kind of comfortably ready to go.
So that one's a success.
Yeah, these are all a success, really.
Well, except there was a couple you're like, it made me feel bad.
No, sorry. Well, yeah, the glutamic, these are all the ones I'm gonna continue using.
Oh, okay. Can I break in and just say, hey, it's great to have you, Rema.
Right on.
Yeah, somebody introduced himself and says he's been watching a lot of my videos. So,
cool.
It is great to have you, and I'm glad you like my videos. It means a lot to me that people actually watch my shit, because for a long time they didn't.
Watching is supporting and some good content. These are all the saves. glutamic acid gives a good physical punch. Too much gives you a headache. You know, the one from today, I like. Theobromine is good. It kind of gives you this rush. You know, you want to find your dosage. That's all I'm saying.
Is there documentation for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I research each one in its hormone and neurotransmitter and other systemic functions in the body, and then I look at dosage. And so usually I'm reading scientific, like SciPub kind of stuff. Yeah, you know, depending on what it is, the research differs. But there's some popular stuff around, like some of these are used for weightlifting, so those will have more popular writing about it. But a lot of it's science articles. Now, you know, my report, I think, correlates to, you know, to what they're saying. Why I'm using them is probably very different. So, you know, whatever that might imply. I think that was all of them. Yeah. So, tyrosine, the one that's a precursor to dopamine and the other excitatory ones. That was nice. That was really kind of nicely balanced. Aspartic acid was super mental. That's just for your amygdala, and that was like, you know, sometimes you get startled and your ears kind of buzz. You know that ever
yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
That's what it feels like, is that buzz. But because you're doing it in a controlled way, you're not startled. You're just kind of excited in that particular buzzy, you just got startled way. So that was really interesting to play with. Yeah, I like that one too. Anyway, so yeah, that's it, man. That's my report. 2 thumbs up.
That was a lot of chemicals, and I did not take any of that in.
Well, when
that's why I asked about documentation. I was like, you should the work that you're doing is really cool, and you should find a way of documenting it that is more lasting than talking about it with people who don't know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I've written down my these basic notes. So I have what it does and dosage.
By the way, somebody I think came in halfway through. Yeah, basically Jeremy is experimenting with nootropics, which are kind of halfway between drugs and supplements. That they're things like precursors for dopamine and glutamate. That will they affect your day, they affect how you feel, but not in a way that's so dramatic as that you're like high. And he's done a lot of work to experiment with these things, and in some cases I think he's doing stuff that nobody's ever really done before, or at least it's not well documented.
Yeah, and I'll add that you do feel it sometimes dramatically. You're not high, but it does feel like if you take a small dose of psychedelics, or you even push that into a mini dose. You know something's going on, but you can do your day, and ostensibly it's making your day better. So I think these really fall into that category. Yeah. Which I guess why I say that is because psychedelics have their own, domain that are different from everything else, but that's just simply not true, and it's dose dependent. They're capable of different things, but they have a lot of overlap with other body, mind, health technologies, and I'm enjoying adding psychedelics to another category you never think of, like vitamins. But in a way, vitamins and psychedelics have this overlap in this nootropic area. So I think that I like that perspective. To me, it seems like it helps the development of psychedelics and their use and understanding what they're capable of. And the reason I got into it again is because I took Adderall for the first time, and I thought, oh, this shit works. I don't want to take it anymore. I'm going to figure out a better way, and this is my result.
Oh, I should also mention that I started my biggest thing is I started a meetup group this week.
Oh yeah.
Called
Tell us about that.
I changed the name. It is called, well, it's in Albany, Oregon. So if you wanted to find it, you'd have to do that geographic search, and then it is called Plant Medicine Explorers. And I'm going to be doing events physically in my house that's what the meetup is for. But I will also probably organize remote events too, and I may do that through the meetup as well.
What's it called again?
It is called Plant Medicine Explorers.
Oh, hey, I'm in.
I figured you might be, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And do you want to tell us more about it, where it's happening or whatever?
Yeah, I'm going to teach. Well, I'm going to have an event teaching, I guess, about kava, but also it's a speakeasy, so I'll play music too, and we'll hang out and drink kava, and that's going to be the first one in about 3 weeks.
I'm going to find that and join right now.
All right. So, did we want to talk about the psychedelic Jesus?
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about it.
Do we want to remind our new viewers kind of a thrust? Why Jesus? Why is Jesus relevant on the show?
Sure. I don't know the answer to that though. Can you answer that?
Oh, well, yeah, okay. There's why it's relevant is Chris has had strong ties to Catholicism in his life, and spirituality, religion in general. And I'm similar. I was raised Jewish, but I now am really taking a good look at Jesus, who he was, what he taught, what that means, for you, how you can use that. When it comes to the sociological parts, the modern Christian, the people who are doing modern Christianity and their main texts, I'm not doing that primarily. I'm needing to find my own way in. And I've been talking to Chris a lot, and his perspective is more traditional, but well thought through, and usually is something that I agree with. So, so that's been part of it too, right? Yeah. So there's something real that's happening in Christianity.
Well, I think that's important. That is probably an important starting off point. If there's something real happening in Christianity, because most psychonauts would not agree with that, right? So why don't you unpack what it is we're talking about as far as what's really happening, spiritually speaking, in Christianity, when it's at its best, obviously.
Yeah. I was kind of blown away when I realized, say too, psychonauts that might traditionally poo-poo Christianity or religion or whatever. I phrased it, there's something real happening. A lot of people say it was bullshit, or it's a bunch of silly beliefs, or you just bought this or that, but which I don't think are wrong at all. But the tack that I've taken is what is going on, not what problem do I have with it, or what. As far as looking into it, I'm not Christian either. I wasn't indoctrinated. I'm coming to it as an anthropologist through a lens of shamanism, ultimately, which is what I've studied for a bunch of years now. But shamans do real things, and they infect people in real ways, and that's what's happening in Christianity. So I'd say the most relevant points I've come up with to build a model for why I think what's happening is happening, which, in short is, some of these are, academic sociology of religion statistics, greater perceived or reported happiness, longer lifespans, better relationships, stuff like that.
Have you looked into that kind of thing?
But
I've read some of that stuff before.
Yeah.
Although Christians also, they have their problems too. They are terrible voters.
They do have their problems too. It's true. Yeah, none of this is to, unlike religions talk. None of this is to say that Christianity is the best or the worst or the only or the nothing at all. Right? We're trying to find what is going on. I don't really care about anything else that's going on but shitty or not going on. Like, those aren't my questions, because those aren't the questions I want to ask. I want to ask what is going on and what I see going on very specifically. And I got introduced to this at the church I work at. People are entering very authentic trance states. Now, that's another huge thing that we need to unpack. What is that? And we know. Should we go in that direction?
Sure, whatever. So you're saying, no, well, specifically, the thing is that most people, especially white people, their memory of church is not going into a trance state. I mean, if complete boredom and wanting to be someplace else counts as a trance state, then they went into a trance state.
Yeah, right. Yes. Well, sure. And this would be important to say to those people, which is the experience you had at your Christian church couldn't apply to the entirety of worldwide Christianity in the same way that any experience you have can't apply to every man or every woman or every day or every anything, right? That's just, it's ridiculous. The world's not that small. And so, yeah, a lot of people now, a short academic framework, there's two ways basically of doing religion / spirituality, right? One is doctrinal, and that's boring. It's always the same. It's the sameness that is actually the prayer in a way, right? Everybody got together and decided what's the one best way we can do it for our beliefs and in God and for God, and they decided, let's do it this way. And within that, there can be creativity, good sermons, good music. But a lot of people, because it's the same, people in the church get bored, and then they lose creativity, inspiration, and then everything's boring, and they just kind of rely on the repetition of the ritual. It's in that case, right? You're not going to get anything out of it, but just doing it is good. You can unpack that, what does that mean? But we won't. And then the other way is religion and spirituality is not necessarily written down. It's a state of being. It's a state of affairs. And it has structure, and the church I'm in is normal church structure. But that structure might change, and it often does change in significant ways. No sermon, no whatever part of the service isn't there. Why? Because something more important is happening. God fucking came into the church, right? So if anything is going to stop somebody talking about religion, it's going to be Jesus or God walking into the room, right? It can't happen. But just imagine, right? Everyone should stop talking about everything, because that's who you're talking about right there. And that's what happens. The Holy Spirit comes in and everybody goes with it. And people do it differently depending on how they were raised. One woman is raised in the South and has a very deep crying, speaking in tongues, getting overwhelmed kind of experience. Other people are very creatively inspired, singing, preaching, saying words, getting, feeling a message. And in a lot of cases, these are like very learned people. Even the people that grew up with this their whole lives and really study. People in this black church I'm going to, they really study, and they take notes during during the service.
Yeah, that's
in
the
their
thing
Bibles,
for
like,
some Christians, not Catholics,
Yeah.
not Methodists. That's my background, but like conservative. Well, it's like, I guess the difference, honestly, is that conservatives actually take the shit seriously. To tell you the truth,
Yeah.
in some ways, that's kind of the difference compared to more liberal Christians.
Yeah, which is interesting, and I would say this church I'm at is kind of an outlier. You think conservative Christianity, I'm not thinking Holy Ghost inner city black church, but they're the ones that are taking it seriously at that level. It's a cultural difference too.
Well, yeah, also the definition at that point of
Caucasian.
conservative versus liberal kind of breaks down, because they're probably sort of conservative in some ways and liberal in others. I mean, they very well might mostly be Democrat. It's hard to say.
Yeah, most of them are Democrats, but when it comes to conservative social beliefs, well, they're conservatives for a reason. I would say when it comes to flexibility around human sexuality, there's definitely the acceptance is written is written, right? They know that they're accepted, but that doesn't mean you're comfortable or really it's the right church for you. That's something I've run into that I kind of had a moment with and then decided to let it go. But anyway, so we have these two kinds of Christianity, and the one we're talking about is Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit, religious. This is more traditional cultures. This is the African part of their tradition, really. Cultures that existed before the industrial era have very ancient cultures that are pagan and shamanic, and they lived outdoors all the time for thousands of years. And nature was everything because by definition it was. And so if you don't respect your environment, you can't survive. And so right now, all these, the older it is, the more involved. Australia is incredible. Anyway, so Africa's older ultimately, and tribal societies, if you have a ritual, if you're going to turn 13 in Tonga, and your tribe is one where you're going to be fed a bunch of hallucinogens and have a tooth knocked out, you better be damn sure that the next day you're a fucking different person than you were the night before. That's some real shit. Getting some water poured on your head, it's metaphorically significant, but it doesn't push you off a cliff, because that shit's fucking real. And it's what modern times we call it initiation, right? You didn't get to choose, it didn't go your way. Something happened to you. Getting married is an initiation, having kids, right? Something's happening to you, and that's this kind of Christianity. And so I take it, seriously in the way that I believe in its value and its worth, because, it's part of a much larger field of study. But what I think is really going on is that people are entering trance states, and there's lots of studies that show that the shaman who most readily entered a trance state was the healthiest of the group. He had idiosyncratic behavior. He was, fighting demons, or he was, took drugs, so he was laying on the ground motionless for hours at a time or whatever. But this capacity to basically this capacity for expanded consciousness, let's say, which includes trance states, flow states, altered, controlled altered states, any altered consciousness framework, and is considered beneficial, evidenced by the healthy practitioners that are more flexible, or social leaders, they're very studied and knowledgeable. They're a resource. Maybe they're the carriers of some kind of cultural ethics. Shamans knew a lot about, weather patterns and migration and nature and the use of nature and astronomy and myth and a million other things, literally. Every single.
Okay, well, how are you connecting all the shamanism stuff to what you see in the Christian church?
Yeah, so my point is that shamans are healthy people. They're the healthiest because they go into altered states of consciousness. Or you could say their capacity to go into altered states of consciousness is an expression of a mature person. And a mature person can do other things maturely: relationship, self-awareness, creativity, putting others before themselves. These are healthy people. And in the Christian church, people are going into trance states. And the reason I think that's important is because, to me, it exemplifies health. What she's doing in her Holy Ghost trance is a sign of health. So that was just my background to illustrate why I think it's healthy. It's healthy because it's been shown to be healthy. And when I say something real is happening in Christianity, and that real thing starts with these trance states, what I mean by that is, because these trance states indicate health, then this is a very healthy practice, and it's happening in Christianity and elsewhere, again, in more indigenous situations, usually. So this is unusual, right? It happens in white churches.
I assume what we're talking about is like, what do you like? Ecstatic kinds of states. You mean like in a gospel? Like, we haven't said explicitly what we're talking about, really. You mean like
trance? Yeah.
Yeah. What does it look like?
So there's let's make the bigger category is consciousness, right? You're awake, you're asleep, you're daydreaming, you're driving trance, whatever they call that. You're right before you go to sleep, right when you wake up. So we have different states of consciousness, right? Trance is one of those states. It's some states happen naturally, like daydreaming, or you're tired. Other states you induce yourself, and that's what we're talking about. So lots of states of consciousness, and the ones that you induce in yourself are called trance and flow. And trance is like meditation, at least in its expression. It's usually calm. There's intense internal experience, and you're a little bit detached from your outer world. You're just not paying attention to it as much. Meditation is like that. Staring at some crazy moving lights for hours would do that to you, but you're basically still. And you're having this inner experience. And the other is flow, which is similar, but you're doing something. You're dancing, you're running, you're playing music, you're painting, you could be mechanical, cutting a tree, whatever. You're just in the flow. So that's what I mean by trance states. They're part of this larger, multi-layered states of consciousness that we're capable of. And the argument is, the more states of consciousness, you should say the more states of consciousness you're aware of, because you're capable, everyone's capable of all of them. It's how the brain is wired. But whether they've had them or value them, or can get themselves into them, is a totally different thing. So the fact that people are aware and can use different states of consciousness implies greater health. So you can take that statement as that's the summary of my whole interest in this. It's a more healthy person that routinely experiences more different states of consciousness. And you can, we're getting into sticky territory, but you can argue, if you look at different demographics of people who may or may not have lots of different states of consciousness they use, it correlates to other things: conservatism, depression, routine, OCD, and the other direction has a shadow as well. So we're not saying staying in one state of consciousness isn't the problem. It's the inability to value other states that, we'll just use the word conservatism. That's kind of correlates. And so there's a kind of health in that particular conservatism, just about consciousness itself. We're not talking about, statistics of divorce. Just about consciousness. To be flexible indicates health. So I was raised Jewish. That's monotheistic. I've kind of studied outside that for a long time, and I decided that I was at this church, which is out of a monotheistic tradition, but totally different than the one I grew up in. Their leader happens to be from my religion, Judaism, which we can go into that. I don't really know who Jesus is, but we're working on that. And whatever he taught tends to help people go into these trance states. Plus the way they conduct services. And these trance states are states that are associated with lots of traditions, and ones that I'm not very good in this particular way, not very good at going into. And I want to learn how to go into these states in this particular way, in this gospel, it's Pentecostal, really, Pentecostal Christian way. I already have the background. So for me, I've studied Buddhism and Hinduism some, but I've studied more than I have this. But because I'm Jewish, this is already my tradition. And something else I find interesting is Judaism, as I know it, similar to Christianity, as people who don't like Christianity or got bored or jaded know it. It fucking is boring and it doesn't do anything for you. And they're basically the same. Joe's Judaism and Christianity sects, that they're basically the same. They're saying the same words in the same order, with the same kind of service, with the altar and pews, with the same theology. I mean, they're really not. Judaism has less imagery and Christianity has more saints. That's kind of it. But when you talk about real living tradition, Judaism doesn't have that. But Jesus made that happen, presumably. And he was a Jew, and that's why he got sacrificed, got hung up on a cross, is because he, in a time that was controlled by the priesthood, said, God doesn't work that way. He doesn't give a shit about money. You can't buy him. Rituals do nothing. You don't have to get there. You're already there. You can't be unclean. All you can do is love. But in a way, his theology is apophatic. What is it? It's an anti-theology. It just talks about what God isn't a lot, and somehow talks about what God is, specifically mystically. Anyway, priests didn't like that. They're going to lose money, so they killed the guy. But to me, what he was doing is what I was missing in synagogue. There was no devotional aspect, and that's very specifically, ironically, why he gets killed for it. Jesus was devotional. He was a bhakti, and so worship. If somebody doesn't know what those words mean, it's you're more emotional about your worship. You really love the object of your worship, and you're going to bow, and you're going to offer flowers, and you're going to relate to it as a person. That's bhakti. It's more relational. And Jesus,
and you feel that that was part of what was radical about what the historical Jesus was teaching?
I think so. Again, this is me studying it for 2 weeks. Kind of. I have a bigger background, and Chris done it his whole life. But I trust that I kind of know my shit. So I don't think I'm too far off the mark. But I thought, yes, imagine this is the same thing. This is what we're talking about. This whole trance state. You're Jesus or you're go to church tomorrow. Whoever's listening to this goes to church Sunday, and you know it's going to be boring. But guess what? You're not going to just sit there. You're going to get up with a tambourine, right, while service is happening, at whatever point you decide, and start running around with a tambourine singing this song about God. And you just keep doing that for like 20 minutes. And you relent, and you don't relent until everybody joins you. That's what Jesus, in his way, was doing. And everyone was like, fucking shut up and sit down. This is supposed to be boring. But he was allowing the Holy Spirit to come in, which is how I've learned to summon the Holy Spirit with music. The church I'm at, we have a band. Gospel songs are super funky and super praise oriented, like expansive, like kind of both, like epic rock, like epic funk. Funk meets epic rock. That's what gospel music feels like, kind of meets like big band. And they're using music to summon the Holy Spirit, and so it's not boring, right? Now you have this thing coming to life that had been put to death by the priesthood, which you could say about Christianity too. And Jesus brought the Spirit back. He said, God's right here. All you have to do is praise him, love him, worship him, be excited, be grateful, be with him. Don't ask for shit. Don't you pray. Just, it means be together. And that's all you need to do, because that's how reality works. And he was a very learned man, and who knows what else. I don't know about Jesus historically yet, but that's happening in this Christian sect, and I think does have these indigenous cultural roots, because it doesn't exist in Caucasian, Western, or what's the word? Northern cultures tend to have more doctrinal religions based on order, and than these living imagistic. This one professor calls it these imagistic traditions that are very much about a real lived experience. It's really happening to you. So that's why Jesus is important. And I think he allowed this experience to happen. And I'm making 100 million leaps, but somehow I feel the church that I'm in, with people going into these trance states, is what, while they're worshiping Jesus, is what Jesus allowed you to be able to do. And he allowed you to be able to do something that's very health promoting, right? It's not the consciousness stuff Chris and I do. It's not random. We're not, psychonauts are explorers, but everybody has their shit they need to work on. And, this is how we're choosing to work on our shit. So drugs are fun, but they're also because we're trying to be better people, and religion does that. And in this case, this certain type of experience does that. And it's links back to Jesus, that was a Jewish revolutionary. And I think I was brought up in, doctrinal Abrahamism, right? Doctrinal monotheism. It doesn't matter if you call it Jewish, Christian, the same fucking shit. It's doctrinal, same shit. You go read the service, it's the same outline. Jews don't do Eucharist, but they have something similar, probably. Anyway, and I've not liked Judaism for that reason. I've sought Buddhism, I've sought elsewhere for these things, what I found in other traditions didn't totally work, because still I was raised monotheistically, and part of me, I guess, needed to connect to that. So now I found in Christianity this aspect that I was missing, that seems very health promoting, that connects to other traditions that I've started, is connected to this historical narrative that's meaningful to me, right? evolution of religion is a very real thing, and he was very part of that. But it's not just religion; it's, you know, humans evolving how they relate to the divine. And you could say that throughout human history, we've created, we've explored, discovered, created altered states of consciousness, other realms. We created spirituality as a species, and religion doesn't really exist without us in the same way. And so, yeah, Jesus did something new. The axial age was huge. That's what Buddha said too. A lot of people think Jesus learned from Buddhism. Buddha said, don't sacrifice a goat, sacrifice yourself. That's the only way you can get to God, right? That was a huge philosophical leap that he made. And Jesus made another huge philosophical leap. He said, you don't even need to sacrifice yourself. You don't need to sacrifice anything. God's coming toward you. All you need to do is celebrate that fact. And I think that's, if you're talking about personal growth, spiritual development, personal enlightenment, whatever, to realize that fact, that's like one of the goals. And he's giving that to people. And I'm understanding it, in my metaphysical way, which to me explains more. Other people experience it differently, but he's really giving you that final spiritual realization. And if you get it, everything else is going to get better in your life. So yeah, that's that's kind of the whole thing, really.
I think the point, we've talked about this, and I've been working on this with other people too, actually. This is kind of a theme right now. Is the idea of, it's the notion of you're already saved.
Yeah.
That's how Jesus puts
heaven
it. Right?
On earth.
Yeah, heaven on earth is, and it's already, you already have it. You happen to be, if you don't feel completely happy with your life right now, that is God. That is the divine manifesting as somebody, having a bad day. But that doesn't mean there's something fundamentally wrong with you or with the universe. You're already there.
And that God is immanent. God exists in the world, in the plastic, in the restaurant. God is in the world, immanent. And while you're God, you're also relating to God. And so you're having this, right? This is these different kinds of spiritual experience. If you are God, that's more of a trance. If you're relating to God, that's more of a flow state. And both of those are at your disposal. And, you should be able to use both of them, because that's going to foster greatest health. Anyway, so yeah, Chris, you say that a lot. And I guess in that moment, I realized, like, oh, okay, there's these two perspectives. There's being God, and then there's being in a relationship to the immanent God as more of a, as more of a person. Again, flow versus trance. But yeah.
Well, that's a matter of identification, right? Are you identifying with the divine at this moment? And that's flexible. That's what I learned from back when I read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda the first time.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I've read it like 3 times and gotten something different from it. But I remember at the time, like, I really couldn't accept, this is when I was in my 20s, and I was more into Buddhism and Hinduism, and I just couldn't accept the anthropomorphic God externalized anymore.
Yeah.
And then what I learned from Paramahansa Yogananda is that you can have it both ways.
Oh, yes.
You can you can explore non-dual philosophy, in which case you're more like you are literally, you're at least a microcosm of the divine, if not the whole thing. And that doesn't mean that you can't also enjoy more dualistic kinds of bhakti kinds of like I have a relationship with God. They're both okay.
Oh, and I'm guessing for you, the being God part was the revelation.
No, the part at the earlier, yeah, but what I'm talking about is it was a revelation that I was allowed to do both.
Oh, yeah. Okay, understood. Yeah. I think me too, right? We kind of idealized one of those states somehow, but I think it was for me too.
Oh, actually, this fellow Al Mann, he's great. He really obviously gets it from his two comments. The first one is Hare Krishna, and then the second one is Christ has already redeemed and liberated us through his precious blood. You know what's funny is that you take those two comments and both of them would be individually might be like he's coming off as a creepy religious person, but actually through the tension between the Christian statement and the Hindu statement, he's really pointing to what we're pointing to too. You can always have it both ways. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay, right? God doesn't judge you. Only people judge you. He's not going to tell you you're doing it wrong, or that there's not another way, or 1,000 other ways. As many ways as possible would be more God, more
right.
Everything.
And you can participate in secular life too. I went through a phase too like that of like I was in a band once, a good band, where the songwriter, some of his lyrics were anti-religious, and I sort of struggled with it. But
yeah,
I mean, that wasn't to have that isn't my favorite thing. But he was a great guy and a good songwriter, and his songs were good. So, you know, why be a fucking dick about it? Unless I'm gonna write my own songs, right?
Good conclusion. Yeah, you can have it both ways. Now, I suppose if somebody's so inclined, then the question of, well, now what? If you want it to have it both ways, or have one way, or, you know, you decided maybe you're curious about that, or, you know, then you start the path, right? And you know, while you're on your path, there's these significant revelations like Chris and I are talking about. You learn a way, right? You learn, you usually learn, you come in a certain way, right? Maybe your parents did it to you, maybe you found something, and then you find something through that one way. You know, you find a way of knowing yourself, a way of deifying or theifying the universe. You, which again is only creating the ability to have bhakti yoga. You don't have to deify the universe. You can be like, you know, a strict philosophical Buddhist, but that's fine. But there's other ways. So, and I guess, like you're saying, Chris, there's something in my accepting a new way that feels really relevant, and it's notable to me because when you grow up Jewish, Christianity is like this weird thing, and you know, kind of had baggage around it. So to be actively embracing Christianity feels like I'm receiving something with a lot of charge, but because it has a lot of charge, it has a lot of content, because it challenges a lot probably about my own tradition. It's not like I don't find it boring and irrelevant. I'm specifically going towards Christianity, which, yeah, historically had some tension around it in those ways, you know, in those same ways. Not every tradition is like amazing. Every tradition has shadow, but you get what you get from it when it's time to get it, I guess, if you care. But I think it's worth caring. At the very least, you can say all day that astrology is stupid. That's really easy. The hard part is to learn enough about astrology to then say it's stupid from an educated standpoint. That's hard. And nobody really wants to do that, because why are you going to devote yourself to something you know is bullshit but it's a tautology because you don't know it's bullshit. You just think it's bullshit because you have nothing else telling you otherwise, and probably a lot of stuff telling you it is bullshit.
That's the classic like atheist problem. It's not that atheists are dumb or even that atheists are wrong. It's just that the God that for most atheists, they just say God doesn't exist. And in reality, the God that doesn't exist is a very specific Judeo-Christian, like 10-year-old version. You know, these people quit going to Sunday school when they were 10, and they assume, and that's the version of God that they don't believe in.
Right. So the question would be, which God do you not believe in? Because, the more adequately you can answer that question, the more educated you are, and the less adequately you're probably going to have, like you're saying, this 10-year-old version of God that nobody really believes in. So why do you stick it with this?
Or at least we'd like to believe that, but of course, not everybody's very sophisticated theologically.
Fair. And I'm running into that. I love the church. I'm meeting with the pastor weekly now on Zoom to talk about Christianity and to really learn from his experience and his perspective. He's a real tapped-in guy, and a creative guy, and so I'm hoping by talking to him, I can understand God, how he understands God, so that I can feel about God how he feels about God. That's
interesting.
That's how I'm trying to learn. Is because it's bhakti, it's heart-based, and because it's heart-based, it's feelings-based, at least to a large degree. And because it's feelings-based, I have to somehow learn that feeling, and I'm doing it through seeing somebody who has the feeling and then kind of deconstructing what they do to get there and then reverse engineering it. Basically, it's probably what academia is. Everyone else is like, yeah, we could have told you that in the beginning, and you're like, well, I needed to go through all the work, so you're right.
You know what might be a good teacher for you? MDMA.
Oh yeah, well it's on the short list. So.
Man, MDMA at a gospel service.
Yes.
That is a big yes.
Yes. Okay.
That is now on the list. That sounds like fun.
I think we have a trip planned.
Oh my God, dude! I'm about to come out to Colorado.
Yeah. All right. I'm game. I know a bunch of churches. See if there's a show.
Oh, would you want to play like that?
No. I meant when I said show, they're all kind of revival. There you go.
Oh, okay, but I was talking about House of Hope.
I suppose if I had one chance, I'd probably go with you to a really happening service as opposed to playing one and have you in the audience. The going together sounds more fun.
Yeah, I see.
But the point's well taken.
Well, I don't know if I was making it. Well, I guess my point was just that going to a gospel church on MDMA sounds fun. That was my whole point. But if you want a life-changing experience, to tell you the truth, I predict if you did go, as long as you know the music well, because you got to watch out for your technique falling. But you've got good enough technique, you know that music well enough. I could imagine you actually having like an absolutely earth-shattering fucking experience, because I love playing music on MDMA. In fact, for a little while, I went through a phase and I realized it was a problem where I could only perform basically when I was on MDMA.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're illustrating. I think so too. I would have to take it at 8 in the morning, which I guess is okay.
What's the difference?
No, it's true.
And keep in mind, MDMA is really more like weed than like mushrooms. You'd be able to, drive home.
Well, anyway,
you might have to wait.
I'm a yes.
Well, anyway, maybe I'm. We can change the subject, but
no,
I just got excited about it because it sounds like fun.
No, I think that's great. Oh, if you're talking when you're out here on a Sunday and we'll do that, I'm thumbs up. We'll do that for sure. Let's plan on it. We'll
That's
take
what
it in
I'm
the
saying.
morning. Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. We'll go. You'll sit in the service. I'll play, and then we'll go hiking afterwards and eat some lunch, get sushi and it's margaritas.
Oh, actually, that is a good idea.
All right. Good. It's fun today. Yeah. I have.
You know what I should do, dude? Is I should trip sit. Oh, I should trip sit for you, and you should take whatever drugs you need to take while you're at House of Hope, and I'll be your driver until we land, and then I'll get high too.
Okay. Yeah. So I agree. That's a huge teacher. I do have 60 milligrams that I weighed out, and it just wasn't the right time. But I think that's why it needs to be applied to something.
Yeah, man, playing music on
that's it,
MDMA
man.
is
It's heart-based,
heaven.
it's feeling based. And so I see these people, and you can say it this way: is it healthier or less healthy for someone to be in multiple states of consciousness, in multiple states of educated understanding, and in multiple states of being able to feel things? They can feel all the feelings. They can feel other people's feelings. They don't have to, but they're capable of it, and they have. Like that would be, we're just illustrating why is any of this relevant. It's because it makes you healthy. Feeling devotional towards the world is useful when it is. That doesn't mean anything else, just that. So, it's heart-based, it's feeling-based. MDMA is perfect for it. I feel like some other new ones we've been exploring recently. I don't know, Kana. I think that would be. You've done it more than I have at this point.
Kana is I am finding myself attracted to it. I like it, but it's kind of a head rush. One thing is I like how it tastes compared to almost everything else, and like all these things are so fucking bitter and shit that just having something that doesn't taste bad is kind of fun. The main way though that I've taken Kana is by snorting it, which is a little weird because it's so coke-like, and then you get a really strong head rush.
What's the lingering effect after the rush kind of levels off?
More relaxing, I suppose.
Can you be more specific?
Well,
dizzy and relaxed.
Yeah, I mean, maybe dizzy and relaxed. These feelings are so subtle, and honestly, if you're talking about kratom and kava and
well, okay, sorry.
I don't know. It's really hard to make a distinction about how different they are. I've only done them a few times. They're subtle, and all of them are, to me, pretty similar.
Yeah, well, I guess I was all the way driving at what you said earlier, which is you would recommend MDMA for me to go to House of Hope. That's very specific.
Yes.
You didn't say drugs. You said MDMA because it affects you in that certain way. There's another use, right? MDMA is for learning bhakti yoga. If that goes in the book of what to use drugs for. I've had limited success just being stoned. Actually, I've had good success, but those emotions intensify, but they don't get so intense that they like take me over, and I can see it from a different perspective. That's the ultimate goal.
Are you talking about at church? You mean?
Yeah, right. So these trance states we're talking about. Maybe we should say this for a second. Like, now what? We've identified them as healthy. We've located them in this church. I have my own relationships to it. But the way they seem to work is twofold. You can basically feel anything you want. You just imagine it hard enough and you feel it a little bit. And this is how manifestation works, or reality, or quantum whatever, like perhaps. The more aware you become of something, the more attention you give it. And the more aware you become of it, the more real it is. Right? just like whatever you call that. It's equal both ways. And the more real it is to you, the more real it is, period. And then at some point, it kind of takes on a life of its own. Somehow in the brain, as you give some neural circuit or mental construct attention, at some point it's like your autonomic nervous system takes over. Now it's not just an executive response, right? It's not a voluntary response. It's an autonomic. You hear something, you smell, your grandma's cookies, and you break into tears without even realizing it happened. Like those smells kind of trigger that state. And somehow, and I still don't know how, I'm studying, somehow Christianity is triggering these states. And the state ultimately becomes an autonomic state. It takes you over, right? You learn, you love, you study, you give more and more attention to understanding and feeling, trying to get close to God or Spirit or Jesus or whatever. And at some point, it's like you fall into it and it takes over. Like, are you really out of control? Like, we don't know, you're not. We don't need to go down that road. But it's stronger than you. You're not trying to cry. The crying is happening. You're just bawling, right? And that's when the ability to take it, to go that far into the experience, to me exemplifies the biggest state of health, or the goal. That I think if I could achieve that, I would feel more connected. Here's why I'm after it, right? I think I'd feel more connected in the world, right? I wouldn't feel so alone or so, isolated in my idiosyncrasies. I don't really have much social anxiety anymore. I'm pretty happy in my life, but you can always feel more connected, to the universe or to, people through the universe or however it works for you. And that's how I'm choosing to go about it. I don't think trance states per se are more important than anything else, but I'm targeting them because to me, consciousness modulation is my path. And doing it in this particular way that happens to be Christian.
It occurs. Can I break in for a sec?
Yeah.
It occurs to me that I don't think that this stuff is actually the idea of this trance state in a sacred space, I don't think is particularly Christian. That's just where you're finding it. Because, think about whirling dervishes. What are they called? The dervishes are from what sect? Sufis. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. No, it's everywhere.
Which is fine. You find it you found the church where you found it, which is great. But I'm not sure it has very much to do with Jesus. I think the idea that Jesus has a unique spiritual quality is an interesting topic, but I'm not sure they're related exactly.
I can't believe you just said that. I think you're going to hell.
Yeah.
No, let's talk about that. Yeah. Why I said that about it happens to be in Christianity is to say their long version is I wouldn't have expected it, but wouldn't you know it, I found it in Christianity. Isn't that weird? That's what I'm saying ultimately. I would never have expected it. But there it is. Now, do I think any of the stuff is important because Christianity is Christianity? No, I don't. Christianity itself doesn't have any special ownership of anything except specifically what Jesus did. And he did something unique, which you can find elsewhere. I think he did it in a social unique way. He made it available maybe to more people. But again, I'll be pressed to say there's anything specific about Christianity that makes it better or irreplaceable by another tradition. So that being said, maybe I'll throw the question out there, if we're comparing traditions, what's a list of criteria that we would even use to compare, right? So spiritual leader might be one of them. or doctrines like belief systems, how the universe works, these kind of things. If one isn't better than another, then, what are the elements that you're actually going for? If it's not the specific cultural trapping. What do you think?
Hold on, I'm chatting with someone.
Oh, you're all right. Well, I'll start. Well, I think
Yeah, go ahead.
If we're gonna say that it's not really about Jesus, right? I don't think trance is about Christianity, or it just happens to work for me right now. But it's easy to say that there's similarities. One similarity that you don't find anywhere is we'd have to compare or contrast Christianity. Well, we'd have to define what kind of Christianity. So it's Pentecostal,
Okay.
for easy terms. So Pentecostal Christianity, white or black, there's both kinds. There's different sects, there's different flavors. But outside Western monotheism, Sufism is very spiritual, right? They're going for the direct experience. That's why they're whirling around. It's not just a dance. It's they're getting themselves into a flow state, which I say because they're physically moving. Buddhism is another one. They're specifically cultivating a state of consciousness using meditation techniques. Why? Because they believe that when you do, the experience you have and the perspective about reality that you have through the meditation, through experience in meditation, is healthier than if you don't do it. And it's not just a belief. Usually you meditate and you feel better, and everyone thinks you're not a pain in the ass. So these are real applied things. So everyone's trying to feel better, basically, right? If you're not trying to get more money, you're trying to feel better about not having as much as you want. Maybe those are the two states of human existential framework. So Sufism, mystical traditions, basically. So there's one. I would say mysticism would be the first big category that we can compare.
Right.
Cross traditions. One is culture. I feel very drawn to this culture that I'm in. It's very different from my own, but for whatever reason, I feel very at home in this church. I feel like I identify with these people in a certain way, and so it makes it easy to work with all the other stuff. If you love Krishna but you hate Indian food, I mean, you can do it, but it's not a... what else?
Right.
Belief system.
If you want to participate with us, but you don't like salvia, that's like going to church. That's like going to church and not liking donuts.
Yeah, you just can't. You might as well turn TV off right now. So yeah, obviously mysticism for both of us is a big one. If we're saying this might be a subheading of mysticism, but a big one for me is what's the actual physical thing going on? I kind of like Christianity because and Judaism because you're not really doing anything. Like Hinduism has all these flowers and statues, and you're dressing them and undressing them, and there's a lot of there's music and there's running around at like 3:30 in the fucking morning. That's hard. So that's cool. It just should be a I wasn't crazy about all the get up, having Jesus on the wall, fine. I think it's kind of gross and beside the point, but it drives something home for somebody that maybe allows them to be more devotional, even though it kind of has this tinge of sorrow. So I don't know.
Well, maybe what that points to, the idea of Jesus' sacrifice points to the idea that the work is already done. I always go back to this because it's a big part of, I guess the psychedelic experience I had. Part of it, on a hero dose, 6 months ago, a big part of the message that came through was not that you'll never have stress again, but the real work is already done. Good job. You did the work. Now just let the blessings fall in. Let the goodness just reign. It's only, despite the ups and downs, life is only going to get better from here. And it's a really powerful message. And to me, that kind of connects to the idea of, hey, I mean, as gross as as Jesus on the cross is, and it is incredibly gross, right? What a fucked up thing to worship. But the message is somebody else, the work is already done.
Yes, which is, and I'll repeat myself, to me, that's the most groundbreaking and mind-blowing revelation that I'm receiving from Christianity. Judaism, and I kind of am tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of also true. Judaism's like, it's never going to get better. So just deal, and like, if you can complain about it, then that might help. That's kind of...
yeah, write some funny jokes about it.
But Christianity says, no, it's not going to get better. It's already done. It's already done. Like, just dig that, and just like be so happy about it, and like, devote yourself to whatever drives the point home. And I agree with you. That's definitely what, in its best way, the symbol of Jesus on the cross allows. I find it interesting, though, that in as much as there's a familial relationship to Jesus, right? He's the son of his father, and maybe I'm his child, or somehow we're related, right? And I'm related to my family. Somehow one of our family members did kill himself for us, and we're like, feel at least a little guilty, right? He's a god, and he's some kind of figure, but I really feel like part of what allows that effect to get to you, that it's already done, is somehow connected to this family thing, right? Buddha's not, I mean, there's stories, but Buddha's not really the son of God, right? Jesus is the son. It's a human family, right? So I don't know, if you see one of your relatives on a cross, you're like, what do I do with this? Am I just like, Joe, thanks so much? Or I'm like, oh, fuck. Wow, that's cool, he did that. That was a big deal. I'm really going to receive it. Or are you going to be like, oh, shit, he really suffered. I feel like an asshole. Like, they're all possible, you know what I mean? And I think useful, because I think it does, the family thing does drive the point home. But it's, the whole guilt thing is an unfortunate side effect, consequence. Let's just say that I don't think needs to be there, because Jesus isn't really a real thing, and historically, even who knows? And if he's the son of God, he's God, and theologically, it's fine. He's not suffering really like we understand it, so don't be guilty. But no, you think otherwise?
Well, it's not so much that I disagree with you. It's just I see an opening where I could cause problems with that.
Oh, how so?
Well, the world does include suffering, right?
Oh, okay.
So if you look at it from a non-dual point of view, if the world does have suffering in it, then the world has suffering, and you could think of that as Jesus sort of still suffering, if you wanted to be a dick and go that way.
Oh, okay.
Oh fuck! I gotta show you this sound. This is fucking gorgeous. Here, let me.
Oh, you just made this?
No, I didn't make it. I'm just exploring some sounds
in,
because I just downloaded some new sounds. This is great sound. Cool. I'll just do the.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Man, fucking Seaboard, man. It's such an awesome fucking. I'm so glad that I became a Seaboard player.
That's great, totally. You really have to play Seaboard. I was trying to play keys, and I never really never caught. But it's really the design, it's physical interface that really makes it what it is.
Yeah, in a way, well, in a way, the fact that I'm not a very good keyboardist, in a way, kind of gives me an advantage. I mean, that's not actually true.
No.
But it does
kinda,
mean I'm really not a
mean.
keyboardist. I'm a keyboard player.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And the MPE effects, the like wide glides and stuff, are a big part of my sound. They almost have to be, because if I was only playing regular keyboard on it, it would be just obvious how minimalist my playing is.
Yeah, you wouldn't be using an instrument.
I'd just be a bad player. Yeah.
Yeah. I was back to Jesus. So and I really like what you're saying. So I'm just kind of like developing it. If suffering is real, Jesus is suffering. He's an exemplar of the real world we live in. And he's sacrificing himself for our freedom. Presumably, that we don't have to suffer in the way he did, but suffering's real. But when we encounter suffering, we can remember it's already been done for us, and we can go through that suffering more quickly. I'm assuming would be like the mind-body kind of like mechanism. So what I was going to add to that is that as God, if suffering is real and Jesus is really suffering for us as the suffering itself, which is the world, he's the world. So first we have sacrifice to God. Then Buddha says, no, don't sacrifice an animal, sacrifice yourself to God. And then Jesus says, no, don't sacrifice yourself either. The world has already been sacrificed for you via me. Life via me, death via me, right? I've liberated you from everything because of my own sacrifice. So what sacrifice? Yeah, Jesus, but he means more than that. He's not just a dude. He's not a statue. He's the whole world, because it's God. The whole world has now become set. At least if we're connected through axial, metaphysics. Now the whole world is self-sacrificing. Or God is self-sacrificing. Self-sacrificing. There's another word for any parent who's a good parent, is self-sacrificing. And they're doing the same thing for their child, like God did as Jesus and for Jesus. Self-sacrificing for your liberation. You don't have to make your own dinner at 2. I'm going to make it for you. I'm going to liberate your suffering of not knowing what the fuck to do because you need to make your own dinner and you don't even know how to. I'm going to do it for you. This whole world is self-liberating. Your own suffering is self-liberating. And that is the state to realize that suffering is self-liberating is to have the realization you had on your trip, which is you're already there. Now this just let the blessings kind of flow in. You did the work already. Jesus did the work. The world did the work. You're part of the world. I mean,
and Buddhists say that shit too.
Yeah.
Or Advaita Vedanta, right? Atman is Brahman. What does that mean?
Yes.
Right? That means you, the singular Atman, already is Brahman. You don't have to do the work for that to be true. Right.
You're part of the all that is everything. And that's the true reality. Is it go to another reality, be in dualism? The truth is, not only are you allowed to worship God and be God, you don't really know God until you do both. So you kind of have to do both, because that's the full picture. And really, when you get there, there's a third thing that happens, whatever it is. When you can do both, when you can be Atman and Brahman, when you realize the totality, when you realize, okay, thin water's here, thin ice, but when you realize that matter isn't particle or wave, it's both at the same time, and to understand the bothness and the metaphysics of how it's kind of like balancing back and forth and kind of inching towards one or the other, and then kind of hits on one or the other sometimes. How that all works is to realize a deeper truth than reality is wave or particle. It's just not true. It can't be wave or particle, because it has to be something that's neither both of those for one of those to happen. Otherwise, it would be a particle and stay a particle. So right now we have this, the already there-ness is not like something else isn't there, right? It is this state that's hard to understand. that Jesus died for our sins, I think is hard to understand because it implies these two perspectives at once, which is the spiritual state, is the trance state, is the revelation of I did the work. All these finalities kind of indicate this, consciousness that can hold these different perspectives at once, which we can bring back to our main topic. If you can not just go into different states of consciousness, but hold awareness of them all at the same time, that's the healthiest way your brain can be, right? They used to think that a healthy heart beats at 60 BPM, whatever, but now they know that if your pulse is around 60, but fluctuates within a certain range, that's actual greater health. It has to, you have to have variability.
Yeah.
Right? So now we have.
It wouldn't have variability if it wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, right. So now we have variability. Now, sometimes you're in one state of consciousness or another. Sometimes you're kind of in both, or you have a flashback, or sometimes you're using basically different states of consciousness to get different perspectives on something in the world, right? My kid dropped milk. It's kind of annoying because I'm late and she dropped milk 3 minutes ago. But in the bigger perspective, does it matter? Does work matter? There's some flexibility. Ultimately, sure, that's real. But do you have to freak out about it? No. There's things that are more real, like God and the fact that you're alive and could die in 15 minutes. The unknown is more real than the problem you think you're having. And I think that's kind of like one of the insights that we get from altered states of consciousness, because, like you said before about pragmatism, if one method doesn't work, then you use another method. If getting mad at your kid doesn't work, then you try to be loving, right? You have different states of consciousness. You get to use different ones,
I think this creates it points to a certain paradox in spirituality. People are one way of thinking of spirituality. Actually, this isn't really my take, I guess, but generally it's assumed that you become spiritual or you develop spiritually, if you want to call it that, because you want to be happier, basically, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, actually, the real path, I think, is the variability that you're pointing to.
Yes.
Being absolutely happy all the time is not going to happen. And spiritual growth, in my point of view, my opinion, isn't just about becoming more happy. That is more like something that hopefully happens along the way. But right. That there is just a magical kind of narrative happening. You just sort of grow, and then you're kind of on this magical path. I'm reading Alice in Wonderland to my daughter right now, and Alice is sort of on a spiritual, adventure. I think that if you're living a spiritual life, you still experience boredom, and you certainly still experience negativity in your life, frustrations and stuff like that. But there's also this sort of excitement where you don't quite know, there's this magical narrative happening in the background of your life that you aren't fully in control of, and you don't completely understand, but it's happening. Do you feel that way?
Which is what?
That it's happening. There's this spiritual adventure that you're happening, and you don't know what's on the next page, really, because it's a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, where the world is so weird that she doesn't know what's going to happen next.
Right. You might start the path because you want to be happy, but ultimately when you're on the path, basically you're having this spiritual adventure. That's the actual experience. You're not just right. I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Right. So you're not, and again, we're not aiming for these fixed states. We're not grasping. The variability is important, and so. As far as feelings go, right, I guess we're saying two things. One is feelings, one is adventure. It is feel like an adventure. It's curious, you're creative, you want to learn things, you're interested about your own internal world. Now there's a whole universe of material to play with and learn about and manipulate and experience and experiment with. But also part of that variability is when you have a feeling. What part of what's so hard about that feeling is there's a lack of variability where you can like learn to just be with your feeling, and in being with it and being simple and giving it space, it tends to be not as intense, and it tends to yield what it has to share. It might need to tell you something, or it's when you grasp onto it, when you want to say it, is this a particle or a wave? When you're like fixating, your brain is inflexible. Literally, your neural circuitry, the electromagnetic patterns stay stuck, and they won't change. And they need to change in order to see things from different perspectives, or to try out different things. Different foods, right? Like whatever. That to me is the variability, and why suffering is suffering, because we refuse to let it be what it is, and we like try to tell it no, but then you just go feel shitty, and then you go to therapists or learn to be spiritual. And that's one of the biggest things, is learning how to be with your experience in this flexible space. And it's the flexibility itself that allows you to feel more calm and less bad than you ordinarily would. And then, you're not suffering anymore. You're just sad, or you're just whatever. And sometimes you're really sad, but you know that it's okay because you kind of have another perspective on it, which being flexible, at least you know that it can change, or it will change, because flexibility is real. Anyway, that's kind of how I see that spiritual path. But yeah, you're not going to just be like blissed out all the time. It's a healthy human experience, and that's the health we're talking about. That's the health in shamans. That's the health in trance states. It's all that's the whole point. You're a healthier person. You feel better. You have a different perspective, and use tricks. The world is self-sacrificing. Jesus died for our sins. Now I feel free. That's a trick. It's a placebo. You can't even test its veracity, right? It's non-falsifiable. It's not a scientific claim. It's a placebo belief. You can believe that you're an okay person. You have no idea. Maybe you're a terrible person cosmically, but probably not, because it makes you feel shitty and your life sucks. So you tell yourself you're an okay person, and you feel better, and people like you, so it works. Why does it work? Fucking who knows? But it's just a mechanism we use. It has this effect on us. And that's a block, right? God's not real, Jesus isn't real, therefore blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's real or not. It's a matter if you can use it for something, right? What is happening there? I'm not asking if Jesus is real. I'm just saying something's happening. I can see it, and I know from experience and study it's a good thing. Let's go after it. You can't. This isn't science. This isn't, So that's the whole thing, right? You're learning to believe in things that really aren't real, but the beliefs somehow affect you in certain ways. Everything we're talking about fits this, and it affects you in a way that works and is positive, and so you go with it. Does anyone really believe blah blah blah? I mean, you can get into theology, but it's different than devotion's different. You do it because it works, because you feel like something. And love is that. Love is the center of devotion, right? Knowing you're an okay person is self-love. I tend not to go overboard in that direction, but I do understand that's probably honestly why I'm so attracted, is I'm trying to deepen my experience in love that's a non-personal love or non-sexual love. I'm trying to learn a different kind of love, and that's part of the adventure. So I feel less shitty, I feel more good, and I feel more inspired because life's interesting. That's a healthy way to be. That's variability. That's all this stuff. That's
and
spiritual realization.
You're pointing towards pragmatism. I mean, I guess in my epistemology, I was thinking about the other day, because we're always talking about it.
Only till we answer the question. Then we'll stop. Yeah.
Oh, I've sort of gone the. You're like, hey, the point isn't that this stuff is real, right? Obviously, it's not real. Literally, it's just. But obviously, it's useful, so let's use it anyway. I've taken the next leap and say this whole idea of objective reality is just something I don't talk about very much. Because what I realize is the very notion of objective reality is itself a cognitive tool that humans made up.
Yeah, totally. You can't, as long as you're using language, you can't really get to any bottom essence. That's what trance states and flow states are for. It's what they call it a direct experience, right? It bypasses you explaining anything to yourself. In a way, it's doing it to you. That was the thing I said before, right? Once your experience gets intense enough that you lose your own self-reference through language or identity, you lose that into the experience, and all you have left is the experience. That's really the truth of, that's really direct reality. Is it direct? No, it's not. You still have a brain, so it's going to show up in a certain way, a certain feeling or color or whatever. But that's closer than a language. But ultimately, I totally agree with you. Anything we perceive, is gonna be the shape of our container.
Okay.
But I like yeah. Well, I was gonna say I like pragmatism. I've been thinking a lot about that word because one, it accepts the reality of what you're saying, and two, it utilizes it to say not only is everything I'm using a tool of consciousness, but I can then create those tools. I can examine the tool, kind of analyze how it works, see the kind of effect it has, and decide whether I like it or not.
You mean like a theological kind of idea? Like, let me play with Jesus is real.
Well, no, I would say it's mind, body, in every way you could possibly define that term. To examine the tools you're using, right? I mean, I'll give example, if an emotional example. You grow up, your mom's abusive. That's terrible, right? You feel anxious. Well, you create tools like you do in any reality to deal with that reality. You create heuristics, because not only is the pragmatist model something you've intentionally created or you're hardwired for, it's also gets fixated or defined, right? So it has different qualities. Some may hurt you, may help you, right? So you may create a tool that all women are terrible because I got abused by my mom. Is that a good pragmatic model? You're going to run into problems real fast, right? So if you examine your model, you're like, oh, what model am I using to understand reality at this level? You can see it, and then you can do surgery on this, and you can, why am I angry at my dad? Well, he was on drugs my whole life. What does that imply? Well, I believe drugs are bad, and I believe this and that and the other. If you really need all that shit, no, you don't. You go in there and you decide what's real. Well, I don't like drugs. I'm not going to challenge that one. Cool. You can leave it there. And then, all dads are horrible. Do I need that? No. How do I do that? Well, meet someone else who's a good dad. Maybe say God's the dad. There's different tools. Now you can intentionally create your model. Anyway, you gave me the word pragmatism. I'm applying it to something that I've been doing for a long time, but you can see those models is what I'm saying, which to me is part of the adventure of spirituality and consciousness. I'll add that in that category too.
Oh,
because you learn how to work with your mind.
There was something I wanted to go circle back to.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to how psychedelics apply to some of the stuff we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And as far as the sacrifice goes, right? Like, this sacrifice is being made, and because this sacrifice has been made, like, I'm already free. I'm already at the destination.
Yeah.
When I take mushrooms, I find the peak of mushrooms uncomfortable usually.
Oh,
In
sure.
fact, I generally speaking, the come down is the payoff. I'm just in heaven as I come off mushrooms.
Yeah.
But I typically do not have a great time when I'm peaking. I find mushrooms kind of difficult, more so than any other drug.
Yeah.
And sometimes I try, or acid at high doses like that too, but not at lower doses. But I sometimes, to get me through, I think of, I know this is good for me, right? Just like that ecstatic experience in church is good for you. You know it's healthy, even if the philosophy behind it is questionable. You know what you're doing is healthy. You can feel it. Well, that's how the mushroom thing is too. It's kind of like working out really hard is like that, but less so. On a spiritual, deep level, psychological level, when you're fighting through that difficult peak on mushrooms, you're sort of making the sacrifice for the healing that you're going to get from it.
Dude, yeah, well put. I think there's so many analogies to that. Sacrificing your ego to experience beyond the ego, because the ego is ultimately creating the suffering. Jesus is an analogy.
In Hinduism, there's a word for tapas. Do you know the term in Hinduism, tapas?
Yes, and I'm pretty sure I still know what it means.
I think I'm saying it right, but it is for going through, the way I understand it, is from going through a really difficult time, like the dark night of the soul, but really dark. But then ultimately it's healing. You come out the other side and it's healing. Actually, where I learned that word, and it's been a while since I read the book, so I don't know it well, was from Alice Coltrane. You know, John Coltrane's wife?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you know much about her. I wrote a paper about her one time. So after John died, she made some of her own records, which are good. They're like avant-garde spiritual music, which, believe it or not, I'm into. I was really into at the time. Believe it or not, I'm into that. But she was very explicitly religious in her work, even more so than Train was, and he was too. But then she went through this dark period, and she wrote a book about it. I forget what it's called, but she wrote a book about her trial, like her spiritual trial that she called tapas. And you could could connect it to the dark night of the soul that they talk about in Christianity, where it was just, she was suffering like every day. She was just getting in bed and she could hardly get out of bed, and she was just suffering this whole time. But ultimately it was like purifying. And then afterward, she started an ashram, and for the rest of her life, she was the head of a Hindu ashram in Southern California.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it is purifying. Going through your shit is purifying. You're suffering because you know you're going to feel better on the other end. And I kind of want to call out, sacrifice. Well, why you call it a sacrifice? Well, because it seems like a sacrifice. It isn't really a sacrifice since you're already there. Why does it seem like it? Well,
that's an interesting point.
What?
We said that's an interesting point.
Yeah, and I think it seems like one because we've arrived at that moment of suffering, because we weren't taught correctly, because we're unconscious about something, because, basically part of our cognitive self needs to be integrated, and it's been split off through some way, right? Freud and psychology says a lot about it. And so you become unhappy because you're not even aware that it's happening or how to change it. And so the sacrifice is when you feel bad, feel worse. And then on the other side, you realize you kind of never felt bad. You just didn't see what you're now seeing. And had you seen it then, you would have stopped feeling bad. So it's hard to know really whether the cessation of feeling bad and the pleasure of your new perspective, like which one, there's the placebo effect where something's helping you feel better. And then there's the nocebo effect where something's removing the mechanism making you feel bad. And I kind of like that one better because Jesus says that. He's like, I'm not going to make you feel good. You don't need to be made to feel good. You already feel fine. You're already there. You just need to stop doing what it is that's preventing you from realizing that fact and just reveling in the glory of it.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. That's the sacrifice, is giving up something that's actually bad for you in the first place. But it does hurt, but you only got used to it, right? It's withdrawal symptoms. Maybe heroin helped you get through, a traumatizing time, but now it's going to kill you, and you're going to sacrifice by feeling horrible withdrawal so that you can have your life back.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy.
Yeah.
It's that short-term sacrifice that always comes before the reward.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that raising kids. I mean, basically, healthy adult life has a lot of that in it, which is what makes adulthood. Is you've learned the value of that long-term investment. It might feel not as fun or good, but really it's going to pay off. You're going to know more about yourself. You're going to have relationships. You're going to learn. You're going to grow. You become a full person. So in a way, you have to sacrifice in order to grow into the potential that a human can be. Like, you have to have those. That's an initiation, is another word for sacrifice, right? Something's happening to you that might be scary, maybe out of your control. You don't know what's going to happen. It may feel like shit, but you ultimately trust you got yourself into that situation, or you trust your ability to rise to the occasion, and that, it's going to be okay because this whole thing is for a higher purpose that benefits you, which is another spiritual, traditional, and new age belief, right? This is all in your highest good. It's in your highest bad, then you're kind of fucked. So you might as well say it's in your highest good. And then one day you believe it, and it feels that way.
Actually, another obvious, I guess if we broaden it out. Oh, look at this. Hayes finally made it. Fucker was late. What the fuck? We even talked about you earlier on. We were saying that we wanted to bring you onto the show and have you join our Zoom meeting. The only problem with that, and you can PM me if you want to meet. I love it when people do that. But anyway, the joke is that if we did bring you onto the show, then we would lose our one fan. And actually, we did that. When me and Jeremy first met, like 25 years ago, we were in a band that was, it was a lot better at meditating together and doing drugs together and being a spiritual community than we were at gaining an audience. And we had one fan, this hippie guy, who would always show up to our shows and stand right at the front and be like, yes, yes. Well, it turned out that he was a guitar player. And he came over and he jammed one time, and actually he was a good guitar player and a really cool guy, and he joined the band. And he's still our friend to this day, but we lost our fan. Our one fan we lost because he joined the band.
Yeah, and then when he quit the band, he stopped coming to the shows.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like having a girlfriend. It's more intense. It doesn't last as long. It's like smoking drugs versus eating them. Yeah, that's funny. Well, welcome, Hayes. I'm down. We can. I think it'd be fun. I'll just say this in general. If anybody's interested in hopping on a line with us, even if it's an off-camera thing and just having a conversation. Chris and I do this all the time. We just are airing some of our conversations, but including other people who, are digging at reality the way we are. I'd say fucking bring it on. So I'm open if anybody wants to.
Actually, I'll add this that I just started a meetup group. And I am planning on doing online. It is for physical events in Oregon, but it is also for online events. And so I'll put it in the chat in case you want to join. And if you ever want to hang out with us, like on Zoom, then you can.
I'm not sure why I just spaced
group.
what you
Let's
said.
see. What is it called
What
again?
do you?
It is. Hold on. It's called. Oh, you have to look in Albany,
Oh yeah.
Oregon, and it is plant medicine
Hey, I'm still on that call.
explorers. Oh, what happened? Oh, I lost Jeremy. Oops. I wonder if he'll come back. We'll find out. But we've been going for a while. I'm, by the way, exploring. I'm not playing music the same way I usually do. I am exploring all these new sounds. Usually I have a lot of loops going, and I'm using loops a bit today, but a lot of my equipment is kind of scaled back compared to usual. And I'm also a lot less in control because I don't know what these sounds are going to sound like. But goddamn, a lot of them sound good. This one's beautiful.
All right, I'm back. My phone died. So you're saying through your meetup group we could jump online or get emails, stay connected? What were you getting at?
Oh, what I was getting at is that I'm going to organize get-togethers like on Zoom, or I might actually use Topia at that point. Probably Topia, but that's not important right now. The point is that we're organizing over Meetup for the time being.
Oh, I got you. So
we'll do a Zoom.
so
we can do a Zoom over Meetup. I was already thinking about this, so it's okay. And like the kinds of we've had study groups in the past, right? And so what I'm saying is let's do it. Let's organize that through the Meetup page.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. All right. So Albany Plant Medicine Journeys is both online and in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well,
that's the idea anyway. If you've got a problem with that, then we can talk about those X's and O's later, not here.
Oh, I can't go in person, so being online is perfect.
Right, exactly. And most of our buddies, like Hayes and other people, and Ben in Britain, we haven't talked to him in so long. You know, maybe if we put together a group, maybe he would show up.
Yeah, no, I think we have a crew. Yeah, so Facebook or YouTube, whatever, find Chris's group, sign up. I think we're finally starting our online church.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about doing an online, actually, we've been talking about online communities together for probably 5 years now.
Yeah, at least.
And actually in the speakeasy we did it. In any case, yeah, and people have told me they want a Discord, a Discord server. And so, yeah, we're thinking about that. Jeremy in particular might like Discord because that's the one that breaks it all up into sub-threads. I was afraid we wouldn't have enough people to have sub-threads, but fuck it. We can try it.
Yeah. Yeah, good. No, we talked the other day. Sounds like since we're kind of talking about that, we have a lot of we've had a lot of in-person stuff. We really haven't settled on any online centralized place. So the meetup to me feels like the first time we've had a centralized branded place that's designed for community and collecting contacts and whatnot.
Yeah, and yeah. Oh, by the way, Hayes is saying he would like to use Discord.
Oh, yeah, all right, cool.
Obviously, Hayes is only one person, but he's the guy who shows up the most, so he's kind of our guy right now, and you got to start somewhere, right? And there's nothing wrong with Discord. People tell me that that's what they want me to do. I've just always wondered, do I have enough followers, or am I ever going to have enough followers to, but maybe that's like a scarcity mentality. You build it and they'll come, right? And if they don't, who cares? Then oh well.
Well, I'm
What are you looking at? You look like you're concentrating.
I found your group, but this is oops, never mind.
I assume that you don't have to be in Oregon in order to join it.
No,
but
no,
Meetup is so geographically oriented that you kind of have to look geographically, I think, like in the search engine. That's the downside of Meetup. The cool part is people actually use it, and you can pick people up, and it's great for organizing events.
Are you going to have any online element to the June 21st thing, or is that purely in person?
I was not planning on making it online because this is the first one. What he's saying is I have a in-person event, which is a introduction to Kava Kava on whatever the date. What date was it again? The
21st.
The 21st.
Actually, you're in town for that. Holy shit. Wait, you're in town for that.
No, that
sorry,
must be wrong.
Sorry, wrong month.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, that's not. Yeah.
Oh, you're.
Well, okay. Anyway, let's not get into this. Anyway, yeah. So, what we were saying, I don't want to get into this boring stuff for too long. Yes, there's a Meetup page and I've got a website too, obviously. But maybe it's time to do a Discord. I've thought about Patreon. And it's funny how much I freak out about. I think about these things and I just start freaking out and stay. I was up to 5 a.m. a couple of weeks ago, thinking about like the pluses and minuses of like Discord versus WordPress versus Patreon, or what relationship they have. It's fucking stupid. But oh well.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, cool. So now we have an online site. I'm really psyched. That's a good start anyway. And it looks like you can chat through this too. So
through Meetup? Yes, you can. Oh, did you join?
Through the event too.
Yeah. Yes, you can. And you can feel free to join the event if you want, even though you can't make it.
So yeah, let's see. What was our last? As my phone died, we were, I guess, wrapping up whatever spiritual thing we were talking about. I don't remember what it was when we got back on. Oh, maybe we're just talking about this group.
Boy, another good sound. Where am I? Thankfully, you've discovered these sounds, and you can always put a heart next to it so you can remember it. I'm not a very good sound designer. A sound designer is the person who makes the sounds, and I've done it a little bit, but I'm not very good at it. So I use a lot of presets. Sometimes I change the presets. That actually held back. Something that held me back as an artist for a little while. It was that one of my close friends in Colorado for the last 10 years is a professional level sound designer, and he is a great electronic musician. He goes by A23P, and he's one of my favorite people to play with. He's amazing, and he's an amazing sound designer, but he's also a little bit like has opinions about things. And one of his opinions is that if you're an electronic musician and you're using presets instead of building your own sounds, you are a fucking pussy. And I didn't want to be a pussy. So I was trying to build my own sounds and even build my own synthesizers in lower level, like coding kinds of things. And I did it, and that dominated my sound for like 10 years. And then eventually it was like, there's a problem with this approach to making electronic music. All of my sounds sound like shit. That's the problem. It's cool that I'm not a pussy, but the sacrifice is that I don't sound good. So I started using samples and VST and presets just like everybody else does. And then I started sounding better. And that is the Cloudless Rain Adventures in Electronic Music. I was like doing these chip tune things for a while, and I didn't mean to make chip tunes. It's just that the synthesizer that I built was so simplistic that it sounded like chip tunes, and I didn't realize the problem for like 2 years. I didn't accept that it was just the sound design that was really the problem.
What's chip tunes?
Chip tunes is where you have sort of like, you make art, music art, out of sounds that sound like 8-bit video games.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
remember how sounds sounded back then? And you can
Yeah,
make cool
yeah.
music, but it's always very sine wavy, and it's just these simple FM synthesis things,
But
as
their
opposed to
musical
something like this. It's a
composition
very
off
complicated
those
algorithm.
sounds.
What'd you say?
Their music compositions, but using those sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is when I started playing MIDI. I was playing pop songs and then changing the MIDI before sending it to the synthesizer. So I would play a Madonna song or a Bon Jovi song. I still do this. And then I manipulate the MIDI in real time with like knobs and keyboard and stuff like that. Changing the rhythms, going fast or slow, and especially transposition, so that it can play in multiple keys and stuff. And then it goes to the synthesizer, and it was always having these problems. This is when I got kicked off stage all the time. When I was playing this kind of music, I got kicked off stage like 4 times in 2 years. So there was a problem. But I eventually realized that a lot of it was just the sound design, that the synthesizer that I was using was so chiptune-y, so simplistic, that it was just a joke, and it got unfunny after about 5 minutes, and then I got kicked off stage. Then I completely changed that instrument, started from scratch again, and rebuilt it, even in a different program. Instead of Pure Data, it was in Max MSP. And then I found a VST, and I started driving a decent synthesizer sound with mostly an electronic piano sound. Still a little simplistic, but it worked a lot better. And that instrument, I actually making music like this mostly now because it's the direction that the whole art form has gone. But if you were to dig into my stuff, you would find the pop song MIDI thing too, which is a lot of fun, especially when you're on MDMA. Destroying Bon Jovi and Madonna songs when you're on Molly is heaven. Literally nobody has ever had that much fun other than me. I'm the only one who has reached that pinnacle of fun.
There's a path, a unique path to God for everyone.
I know. I should have like my own ashram that was all about using nerdy music technology tools in relationship with Molly in order to rise and meet the Lord.
I just saw our channel for the first time, and I saw on episode 6 you did some kind of like AI to my face.
Yep. Yeah. What I did on that one, because I use the Midjourney AI tool a lot for thumbnails. Unfortunately, I am a believer in AI I know it brings up ethical and stuff problems, but I am still kind of a believer in it. And for me as an artist, it doesn't replace my art. It enhances my art. And there are things that I can do now with AI that I always wanted to do before, but I just didn't have the resources to do it.
Visual.
Oh yeah. So anyway, what I was getting, visually, I use it for thumbnails, or actually the virtual world on Topia that we will probably use. It's all built out. Is all of the art is done with artificial intelligence, and I don't think of it as a threat to artists. Anyway, what I was getting, visually, I use it for thumb. Oh, what the fuck happened? Did you just? You just turned it on?
Yeah, I'd never seen it. I just turned off the.
That was hilarious. It was coming through. It was like in Spaceballs. There's the scene in Spaceballs where they watch the video of the movie while shooting the movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. They had some term, some like special preview thing.
Yeah. Did I tell my story? That was the story. I forget what I was talking about.
Oh yeah, you're the only person that has
it was my cult. My cult is the cult of, I'm trying to come up with a good name. It's like the Church of Robo Bon Jovi. Something like that. The robot Michael Jackson temple. And then you reach ecstatic states by playing polytonal Has to be polytonal. Polytonal pop songs while on MDMA. And that is how you reach the kingdom of God. There's the psychedelic. There's our psychedelic Jesus.
I mean, you kind of been working on that a long time, but now it's like, can you achieve transcendent states in an artificial environment? Can robots cry? Can you experience God through song smashing?
I suppose that's true. I've even worked a little bit on video games. I play the video game Overwatch, which is a first-person shooter, and I don't always do this. Sometimes I just get high and play. But sometimes I'm really thinking, I try to make it a meditative kind of practice because I try to be detached from the outcome. And that's really hard because those video games, they are dopamine machines, right? I mean, the whole point is win, 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 right? And so to try to not think that way, to try to just be in the process and not attached to the outcome of whether you win or lose, but also be present enough to play the game. I've been working on it for years and I still can't really do it, to tell you the truth. And then I get a little hard on myself. Sometimes I'll even be playing well, but I'll be like, but I'm attached to the outcome.
That's what I was trying to get at the other day. I was like, what was your theory about addiction? Yeah, that's it. It's not about the video game's not the problem. And in fact, the dopamine state's not even the problem. Not being aware of it's the problem. Not being able to maintain a detached frame of reference is the problem. Would you say that?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much true of all addictive things, is that, well, I don't know if it's all of them, but like your relationship both with weed and alcohol, you should fucking teach classes in just weed and alcohol, because you have the most healthy relationship with those two substances of anybody I've ever met.
Yeah, I kind of agree, honestly.
Why don't you? I gotta go pee. Why don't you tell our people both? Tell them a little bit about why we both think that you've got a great relationship with weed and alcohol. Okay.
All right. So I guess we're saying that, right, Chris? Consciousness people do this. Chris does it, I do it, my partner does it, his partner does it. A lot of people listening do it. If you're interested in studying consciousness, you're going to seek states of aroused consciousness, where you're having an internal experience that's heightened in some way. Meditation, drugs, unique experiences, alternate experiences, intense experiences. But not only are you experiencing the experience, you're also trying to gain a level of self-awareness during the experience. But if the experience is intense enough, it's gonna pull you away from that agenda, and then you're gonna remember, and then you're gonna pull it back. And that's what breathing exercises are. You're gonna cultivate this experience of just breathing and being aware of yourself breathing. And so you go in and you breathe and you're aware of yourself breathing. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about something else and you lost yourself to your dopamine brain, right? Video games heighten that dopamine, but it's happening anyway, or your wandering mind. And so you're sitting there and you're like, wait, I'm supposed to be breathing. I am thinking about breathing. I just forgot. Now I'm thinking about dinner. So I'm gonna breathe again. And so then you breathe and it happens over and over. So then eventually what you get to, when you remember to come back to your self-awareness enough times, it kind of becomes hardwired. It becomes easier to remember. And in fact, you don't go all the way out into what's for dinner. You kind of, like we were talking before, you have greater variability. Now you can breathe, you can be aware, you can realize that your mind's kind of trying to wander, and you're not doing a lot to prevent it, but it's not wandering that far because you've practiced just being here. So now you have these like multiple states of awareness. So for Chris to do this with video games is actually quite brilliant, because you're heightening your experience, you're making it harder to focus, such that you can give yourself more to work with to practice staying focused on your own awareness. But it's not different from breathing exercises for a newbie, because it's hard to focus anyway. But when you've done it, you can add some fire. So now we have video game meditation and being aware. Anyway, for me, cannabis and alcohol do that in a similar way. Like, I have things that I do to make focusing more difficult. Say, like being in a loud room and then trying to like focus, that's one way of gaining novel insight into yourself, because again, you're sticking with your own experience, and you go away and you come back. Alcohol and cannabis do that in a way. Cannabis heightens the wandering mind. Actually, what it's doing is heightening the mind's variability, I've found. And so if you are going to smoke, your mind is going to run in all sorts of different directions, which means two possible things. The bad possibility is you don't go anywhere, you kind of forget what you're saying, you maybe get overwhelmed at all the possible things. A number of uncomfortable things can happen. But if you learn the discipline to, again, same thing, that's the video games, stay with yourself, stay with your experience, and then you're high on cannabis while you're staying with your experience, now something really crazy happens. Now, all those directions your brain wants to run, you can direct it. You can be like, there, go, and it'll go and like give you information and give you insight and ask interesting questions and see things in a different way. And then once you go, you just kind of start steering, and your brain's like, oh, well, here's an analogy, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, I don't like that one. Think of another one. And then it's like, well, here's an analogy. Like, that's it. And then you like keep going. It's adventure. So I think I would love to teach cannabis use to people, because I would say, in the way video games try to pull your attention away from your own self-attention, cannabis kind of blurs it out. In a way, it's doing the opposite. And alcohol kind of does too. It's kind of making you not care as much about maintaining attention. It doesn't pull it from you when you forget and you start wandering, or you focus on the bad guy. You kind of give up in a way on your agenda of staying focused. Alcohol, they're similar in ways, right? There's this kind of really active, fun, kind of like, alcohol is more physical than cannabis. Cannabis is more mental, but they kind of have this they can have this kind of like rambunctious, attention everywhere kind of vibe. So it's I would say, if you're going to put yourself in a situation that challenges your ability to stay self-focused, and now you have to use more power to stay self-focused, that very addition of extra power now is an added tool, and you get to use that level of power to be creative. And so I do this experientially more with cannabis. Alcohol, almost has this problem, but worse. It's super acceptable. Everybody does it. It's not special. If you overdo it, it's fun, but it doesn't do anything. It can be easy to overdo if you're not careful. There's no real consciousness in it anywhere. It's more a matter of, it's been so normalized, you drain it of any specialness. Why would you have an intention when you drink? That's ridiculous. Well, it's not. It's a drug. It's a psychoactive drug. Having intentions are good. Like crack you up.
All right. I'm going to join you for a second. I just think it's funny that you always dive right. It's just. You drive right into the extreme, like, abstract. When I thought, I'm not saying you're wrong or you went the wrong direction. It's just, when I was saying you've got a great relationship with alcohol and weed, I just mean that you partake of both of them, but you don't overdo either one.
Well, yeah, that too.
But more than that, you get a lot of joy out of, you smoke very small doses of marijuana, right? Compared to me, we'll go get together, and I am kind of a lightweight, but I smoke like twice as much as him at least. Because he literally just takes like one hit, and he's like, that's it. I got it. I just needed that bump. And with alcohol, I think you basically only get drunk with me. And,
Probably.
And I drink a lot more than you, but I'm not an alcoholic, but I do drink on a pretty regular basis. Anyway, but he is basically a scholar of herbal liqueurs and has a collection of herbal liqueurs that's worth thousands of dollars, or at least it was when you bought them. And he doesn't even drink them very much because he gets so much joy out of just studying them and tasting them. I mean, that's very, very healthy. That's my point.
Okay, there you go. See, you're being all sociological now. No, I agree.
That's funny. You call me sociological, and I call you abstract.
Well, I mean, I cannot abstract. You know, part of studying and tasting alcohol is mindfulness. That's all we're saying. And part of not smoking a lot of weed is mindfulness. Why? Well, you're giving, there's more mind that you're giving to the alcohol itself, you know, the effect of it, or physically smoking. I don't like that. I like what it's doing to me. But if you're mindful with cannabis, and like I was saying before, you've done practices where you're powerfully drawing your self-attention back, it doesn't take a lot. You can do any dose you want and have any experience you want, but that's a unique one, to be able to hold your intention and self-awareness strongly, because even a little bit of weed usually knocks people out. They forget everything they're talking about, which I do too.
Yeah.
But yes, I would say it's mindfulness. That's the link between what you said and what I said. The health is not doing much, really enjoying it, getting a lot out of it, and I think mindfulness is that key. And yeah, I haven't actually tasted. I've been more into beer lately, but I do have this wall of bottles, and I had to pack it up. But when it's out and I'm standing in front of the wall, then I'm really curious about tasting things, not because it's that special bottle, but because it's part of a larger category. And so maybe I'm wondering whether I should move it to another category. And so I'm going to taste it. And is it really more orange, or is it more cinnamon, or is it like a new flavor category? Because you find these herbal liqueurs fall into like categories. And so my whole collection is organized into different colors and different flavor profiles and countries. And I could upload a picture
history
of
stuff.
History. I have one made of mandrake, which, if anyone knows, is one of the cholinergic, anti-cholinergic witch flying herbs, right? It makes you feel weird and see shit.
Yeah, right. Mandrake is actually, no one uses it anymore because it's poisonous, right? But it is a psychedelic.
I even have a shelf in my collection purely devoted to liquors that are so extremely bitter and unpalatable, they're completely undrinkable. And I probably have maybe 8 to 10 of those. It takes up a whole and once in a while I'll taste one of them, but they're really awful. But just knowing that they're out there, I feel better about the world, so I keep them.
Right. And these are all come from, I remember when you were going through this phase, it was fun because you were studying, it was very cultural for you, anthropological, because herbal liqueurs, a lot of them are hundreds of years old, and they've got like 50 ingredients, and they're all what the farmers in that area, that one valley, had access to like 200 years ago.
Yeah. Really
It's fascinating stuff. And once you
And-
get used to the taste, they're really fun to taste too.
Yeah. Yeah, you like notice subtleties. And Chris got a lot of free booze from that period.
Oh
too,
man, that was a great time. That was a great time to drink too much.
It is true. We'd have long tastings. Yeah, it's good to know that not every alcohol manufacturer wants to make their shit taste like bubblegum flavored vodka. Like, some manufacturers create things that are literally undrinkable, and they're selling this shit. That's their business model. It tastes, yeah. So that just gives me hope. It gives me hope.
It gives you hope.
When everything else tastes like liquid bubblegum, at least it tastes like absolute dirt. It gives me hope in humanity.
Yeah,
because
it's sort of the harsh noise of liqueur, of
100%.
alcohol.
100%. Not everyone, and not everything has to be new age music. That's not actually what plants and trees sound like. That's just what people like to hear. But so anyway, yeah, that's healthy. And I don't, I've been so I met with a friend, and I mentioned that I was thinking about doing a hero dose. 5-6 grams, and he said, "Oh, you've never done more than 5 grams?" I said, "No, I've never done 5 grams." He's like, "Yeah, my go-to used to be 16."
Oh my God, really?
And then I said, "Well, did you experience different things and decide 16 was where you wanted it?" He's like, "Yeah, it's really qualitatively different than lower dosages," which I find hard to believe, because at some point it seems like you're just, if you're any higher, you're just gonna be unconscious. But or at least anyway. So, but he said, yeah, no, there's a qualitative difference as you go up and up and up. You pass certain thresholds, and 16 was another threshold. He said, well, it's the same with acid. If you can handle your shit at 500 mics, you can handle your shit at 1,000 mics. They're really, he said, at 1,000 to 5,000, that's a big difference. At 100 to 500, it's a big difference. But he said from 500 to 1,000, it qualitatively wasn't that big of a difference. Anyway, short story is I really have been thinking a lot about dosage. Low dose, I'm finding that some things I'm really passionate about having low dosage, and some things I'm really passionate about high dosage. For me, DMT and let me go somewhere no one can hear. For me, DMT and salvia, I feel very passionate about high dose use. They're short, they're not going to last longer. I find that because they're short, their intensity seems very novel. And so I've decided that I wanted to kind of focus on the intensity of those experiences. Yeah, cannabis, low dose, alcohol,
It has to be low to medium. Alcohol's a good one. Alcohol high dose has no role.
Yeah,
and you do it accidentally once in a while, and you regret it every time.
Yeah, no, that's the mindfulness, because if you have an intention, if you go in and your intention is at least, like in video games or mindfulness exercises, to like stay with your own self-awareness, at some point you're going to push the ability to do so because you don't feel good, or because the drug's pushing on you so hard you can't do that, which isn't bad. You can go further and just not be a self anymore. But alcohol doesn't function real well at high doses. Psychedelics do a much better job of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, alcohol for me is low. I like being tipsy. I like being kind of drunk, but I'm just physically sensitive. I grew up eating hummus and salad, and I haven't beaten up my body enough to be cool with high dosages of certain things. Medicines like that too. I'm just more sensitive. But I guess that's why some things I like in high dosage because of their effect. Mushrooms and acid, I want a solid trip. I don't need to take tons, but it needs to be like well in the psychedelic realm. And I am curious about higher dose, not LSD anymore. I feel like I pushed the dosage, and at the time I went as far as I went. But mushrooms, I think I'd be curious if I really believed that 5, 10, and 15 were threshold points in the course of my life. I'd probably try that out because it's safe. I mean, of any drug, I would say that's the kind of one I'd focus on.
High dose. I mean, I don't know about the 16 gram shit. I mean, I don't want to be judgmental and saying he's wrong, but no. I guess I feel like I hear about these things, and there's this pressure, like, if I'm a real psychonaut, I'm going to be taking 20 grams of mushrooms, and I'm kind of like, I think I'm pretty good at I'm pretty good at getting high, okay? And I mean, I understand there's things I'm missing out on, and maybe it's because I'm a big pussy.
Well,
yeah, maybe that's just how it is.
I would say the point is kind of like I do with Christianity. Is something happening at that dose? That would be the first question. If it's not, then it's an irrelevant question. If it is, then you can just ask, well, what? Is it if you drink enough, you're going to get blackout drunk, right? That's a thing. That's a threshold. You could say what happens at this dosage? You get blackout drunk. You're like, is that good or not? Well, that doesn't sound like something I want to do, so I won't bother. But if 16 grams, there's something that's happening that's relevant, then I'd probably try it only because now I know what's going on. I think, here's what the psychedelic map is not, right? We have this map like this, and in the center is kind of nominal dosages, and you're like, know your shit, and then here's other dosages out here, and if you haven't done it, then those, the further out you go, the more of a pussy you are. That's not the map. That's not how the map works. How the map actually works is there's dosage, and then there's things that happen in that sphere of that dosage. And at some point, I wouldn't think more would happen, or maybe you couldn't perceive it or something, but maybe it does.
Hayes suggests that I don't think that we'll agree, but that shrooms, or rather salvia, sort of replaces high dose shrooms. It is true that salvia is a great tool for having a really deep experience, and actually Jeremy was just saying that he thinks DMT and salvia are 4 high doses.
I like them better. I'll agree with Hayes that for me, high dose salvia feels like the dissociative effect of high dose mushrooms, but the physical sensation and the content for me don't match at all. Just the dissociative effect. So.
Yeah. My go-to, as you know, but my go-to is stacking. This is basically how I trip, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Is I always stack. Generally, my favorite tool. Right now my favorite. Oh, I thought about talking about it today, but we're out of time and we need to call it a day. But is a relatively low dose of ketamine with a medium dose of salvia on top of it is kind of my new favorite now.
Yeah, man, I knew when I introduced you to ketamine, I knew that there was something there. If you were,
did you think I would like it? Is that what you're saying?
I thought you would have liked ketamine, but I was immediately curious what you thought of the combination of those two.
Oh, really?
Different. I knew ketamine was different, and I knew the salvia was your thing, so I was curious about 100. Yeah, so
they're both dissociative. I don't know, they just go together really well. And what I love about stacking with salvia or DMT, but I prefer salvia, is that it means you don't have to have such a high dose of the base medicine. So it's just so much easier to fit into your night.
Yeah.
You don't have to take so much, you know. I just feel like it's more elegant. You know, you take a base of however high you want to get, and then you stack on top of it, and you can really fucking go for it. And it's like having two knobs. That's what I think of. It's like having a mixing board that has more than one knob on it. You know, instead of only one knob, instead of only having the gain and nothing else, you've got two knobs, you've got three knobs, and you can really mix your chemical combination to a very specific combination that you want, instead of just like, I want to get higher, so I'm going to take more.
Getting higher to take more. I mean, it is higher, but there's different qualitative effects to it.
I mean, get higher, yeah. You take DMT. If you're already on acid, you take half a hit of acid, which is very manageable. You can do that in an evening and sleep that night, right? But when you're peaking, you take a bowl of DMT, and now it's a fucking rocket ship, right? And you can really have an experience and get to sleep that night too.
You know, I want to make an analogy to the amino acid supplement thing I've been doing. What you're doing with stacking is exactly what I'm doing. And honestly, it's using a similar part of you're using your neurotransmitters also, but I think it is smart because you're saying,
you could say that.
I need a bait. If you're mindful, you can kind of urge yourself in different states of consciousness, right? Chris and I have lots of experience with different states of consciousness. So now why stacking works, I would argue, is if you have a base, right, you're starting yourself off with some kind of, you know, raw psychedelic states, or you know, you call it what you want, but as you stack other things, you're not just stacking drugs, you're stacking qualities of consciousness, and you're constructing a trip, right? You take enough of something that's going to create it for you, but if you do it intentionally, then you can, kind of like we were saying about our pragmatist models, the ones you're using, you can start constructing your consciousness, your model in certain ways with all these little tools. You can tweak it this way and that way, and so I think salvia adds a dissociative effect, which is part of what psychedelics is.
Yeah.
And that ketamine really, it's different, but I just say it's just ketamine, acid, and mushrooms serving as a base is like a psychedelic quality, which is different than dissociative. What's the word I use for salvia? Dissociative, yeah. Psychedelic is that, right? And then DMT is like, its own. Anyway, so that's why I like stacking. It's like you're intentionally, you know, drugs well enough, you know, being high in your consciousness well enough to then use them all together in an art form and like use different things to create different scenarios. I'm going to start stacking these supplements, which I've only done one each time, but I'm going to start stacking them to, like, you know, if I'm going to have a day where I'm in the car, but I want to have energy, I don't want a lot of glutamate because that's physical energy, right? I don't want to give myself physical energy because I'll get tired if I don't use it. But if I'm like running around doing errands, if I have a physical day, stacking in a way that promotes energy with physical activity would make more sense. So, you know, this is another expression of mindfulness, I think, right? You're aware, and once you know your shit well enough, then you can create these systems for yourself, which, anyway, so I think it's cool. I've always liked that stacking. I think we might
maybe that's my book. I wanted to write a book about, maybe this is our book, How to Get High.
That's a good title.
I mean, not that there are things that we don't know about. Neither of us know very much about hero doses. That's the truth. There are a lot of wise people who know things that we don't. But there are certain things that we have figured out.
Wait, what was it? We don't know as much about what?
Well, like hero doses. We do not know as much as some people.
Yeah, no, we
And
have
there are
our
people that I respect that know a lot more about certain elements of psychedelics and drugs in general than me. But we figured a few things out. You know what's funny is this last time I did ketamine, which was a fantastic fucking trip a couple weeks ago. Just fucking awesome trip. And one thing that I tripped out about, I was in a place where I needed to work on my confidence, basically. And so this was important at the point was at the time was I thought to myself, I'm just like tripping fucking balls here, but I found my word, I found myself enough to be able to say, I am really good at getting high. It's the strangest craft. I never knew that I was going to get so good at getting high, but I
So
really am.
and you no, man, that's yeah, that otherwise known as modulating your consciousness is getting high. That's the
Well, actually, getting to be good at meditation is a huge part of getting good with psychedelics.
yes.
You have to be able to control your mind.
Yeah,
And,
100%.
and the tools, the outside tools, the drugs, and the set and setting are, well, I guess setting are only 50% of it. Knowing how to navigate your own mind is straight up 50% of the game.
Yeah, they should have added that in. Should be
That is set. Now that
Mind.
I think that would fall under set because it's
I
mindset.
guess so, yeah. But yes, doing your learning to control your consciousness, absolutely. Yeah. Million things to say about that, which we won't. But
Yeah, we really need to call it because I need to go back to work.
You were hot, really tripping balls on ketamine and salvia. Was that the combo at that moment?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
Only medium doses, and I drove home an hour later,
Yeah, okay. Right.
or
right
an
on.
hour and a half later.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't necessarily responsible driving, but I had mostly come down. In any case,
What?
yeah, I know, fucking rocket. Like, it's like a dark well of fuzzy goodness that you just fall into.
Yep. That's yeah. I had a dream of jumping into the foam pit at Chuck E. Cheese, but it was all dark and I couldn't see anything. And I kind of had that sensation. It was like slow-mo. Um, that's good to know. I'm gonna try that.
All right. Well, I think we better call it. I need to go.
Well, it's been fun.
Yep. All right. Thanks, y'all.
All right.
Yes. Okay.